and chaos as the beginning. In the beginning of life there was chaos, and the movement between chaos and order, that often conception happens with an element of chaos and with order.
What do you think about managing chaos?
Well, I think this is like an essential of birthcraft, because birthcraft, and being a midwife or a doula or a birth worker, you are always developing the skills to surf with chaos. And in an apocalypse there's chaos, in floods and fires, in wars, there's an element of chaos. So part of the skill of working with birth is to work with chaos, is to work with what you think is known and then becomes unknown. And when you think your day is going somewhere and then you get called to a birth, or you think the birth is having a certain outcome and then it changes to another outcome, or the disorder and chaos of emergencies, of floods and fires and tsunamis and wars, how do you find order within chaos, and how do you get comfortable within chaos?
You think we have, like as midwives, what we should do is to be able to manage the chaos and get prepared for chaos, and what tools we have for that?
Yeah, and I mean that we were talking about this, like that recipe for chaos management, and how that can be an external thing around what we do, and those skills of being bossy and making order, but those actual internal skills we need. And we talked earlier about calling them like the skeleton tools, and those really ancient school tools of birthcraft, which are using our mouth, which is our clear communication and loving communication, and using our eyes to observe what's around us, and not only using our eyes to see what we can see, but to see what we can't see, and then using our ears to hear what is both audible and inaudible, what you can hear on the surface and what you can hear underneath, and using our touch, because skilled touch in birthcraft helps. If a baby's head is born and the shoulders need support, it's skilled touch that helps that. It's skilled touch that helps to settle and soothe. And also looking at those real basics, like how do we organise for there to be warmth? How do we organise for there to be clean water? How do we organise for there to be fire to sterilise? And what were your thoughts around that? What were your thoughts around those skeleton tools?
Yeah, I completely agree. Skeleton tools are very like basic things, but also like using our all the senses, and the seen and unseen tools, and also in the way of how do we feel of being comfortable in the chaos. So in a way that sense of having a chaos but being quite comfortable in the chaos, how you manage the chaos. No, I find it very, very interesting, and like how you manage to be in the dark, how you manage to be in the chaos, and I think that's very important tool for a midwife to manage inside of you, and then you can help other to manage that in labor.
And what is it, do you think, that you do that helps you manage chaos inside yourself?
I go there. I go with the flow in the chaos in a way. Till a certain point where I have my boundaries, where I can like feel. It's like being on the scale. And if I know what is on one side, and then I know and face what is on other side, I can feel how it is to be balanced in both of these sides. But basically I have to put the same amount of weight on one side and the same amount of weight on another side to balance.
And are the two sides that you're talking about, one side being a sense of order and what is known and what is predictable, and on the other side it's a sense of what is unpredictable and what is not known? And of course for midwives and birth workers and doulas, we are on that, you know, that balance, the line of that, the thread of that. It's the importance and the seriousness of life and death. So within the chaos, you know, there's always that potential for an unexpected outcome, an outcome we don't want, or an outcome that a family don't want. And so I'm wondering, when you're talking about balancing these two sides between order and chaos, when I think about that, is it also that you're balancing this sense of having trust on the side of order, and then having the side of chaos is knowing that you cannot control an outcome?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Is you know, I always remember the movie that I really liked when I was a child, the Forrest Gump, and there was a scene, I think in the end, and when he sits down and he says, well, I think what life it is itself, and that I think that life is like a box of chocolate and you never know what feeling you will get. And at the same time, life is like a fair that goes and flows into the wind, and you never know which way it will be blown away, you know. So it's like both. You choose the piece of chocolate, but you don't know what is going to be inside. You choose the piece of that, and yeah. So it's like it's both of them, known and unknown, and you choose in a way to go. You have to choose and go into unknown to taste the all the sources, all the juices of life. And yet you have to be very flexible and let the wind blow your life. So it's very interesting and very complex thing to do for and to work in yourself as a midwife, I believe.
Yeah, and it makes me think about three things. One, it makes me think about how that capacity to work in the dark, and the dark being the unknown or what is chaotic, and chaotic, you know, the chaotic being the divine order of the universe, which looks like chaos, right? And it makes me think about, you know, this thing we have, getting comfortable with chaos or building our resilience with chaos. It makes me think about two things, and one is the comfort. Well, it's not comfortable, right? But often we're in a culture that always tries to keep life at all cost. It doesn't like death. And I know many midwives and myself have this real fear of persecution and this fear of blame. If something goes wrong, I will be blamed, and that's very ancient and very archetypal. But actually what helps me deal with the chaos of the unknown, what helps me dance in the dark, is dropping deeper than that fear of being blamed or that fear of an adverse outcome, into the trusting of every situation I walk through or walk into has an order within the chaos that is part of my learning and growth. That its spirit has a hand in the weaving of the tapestry of how I am involved or not. And my safeguarding against that is really listening to my inner core of, is this a situation where I have a full yes to step into? Or is it that I have a no to step into, and really honouring that no? And then the other thing it makes me think about with chaos, dancing chaos, is what I use is the resource of my own body, of two things, of my own spine, of my own spinal cord, as this sense of a very strong sense of midline that's always there and never goes away. It's very straight up and down. So if there's a lot of chaos externally that my eyes are perceiving or that I am hearing, I come back to rest into this up and down midline of my spine. And the other thing that's helped me build my resilience for chaos, I mean, partly it was my childhood growing up in moments of chaos, there was a level of comfort. But also my bones, because the skeleton has an order that you cannot really argue with. Ribs have their own way they sit. And so when there's a lot of chaos externally, I feel the level of order that's in my body. And that also helps me hold both. But I definitely think, like what you say, moving within the dark and moving within the unknown and moving within chaos is something, if you are willing, you can grow capacity within. And what I see within modern birth work and hospitals is we're becoming more and more afraid of that and less skilled at that. And so as a result, the way that people are birthing and the way that birth providers support birth is changing.
Yeah. What also helps for me is the image of the tree, also as a centered. So the tree is just standing there, and sometimes he gets the wind blows, like the really strong winds, and the branches are moving really strong, and the leaves are falling out, and but as far if a tree has like really strong roots, and more down roots the tree has, the higher and the stronger he can go up into the sky. So also it's like this going down into into the ground, going down into the dark, going down. It's very important for you to go up at the same amount of the energy or balance again. Yeah, so it's you can think about it horizontally, and you can think about it vertically also, which helps a lot.
And it sounds like there you're talking about using earth as resource, using those images of tree, or you could use the images of a rock in the ocean, that the rock stays so steady, it holds its center, and the ocean can get as stormy as it needs to, but the rock holds its center. And maybe it's similar to, it's curious, we've started with chaos because that's like the big bang of the world, but in labour the chaos is almost like transition is the most chaotic part. And one of the things, within chaos, one of the things within earth, within bodies, within labour, within life, is that it always passes. It's how do we have the resilience to remember in those moments of the most chaotic, the most hard to sit with, that it is temporary. It's a temporary experience.
Yeah, and how you deal with that also is super important.
Yeah.
Where is your level of comfort in the chaos?
Yeah.
Yeah, also for me the strongest image is the cosmic snake. And like also the horizontal and vertical in every level. Yeah, the snake moves from one side to another side, from one side to another side, and it gets to her goal very fast, while moving from one side to another side. And also if it's a cosmic one, so it moves from down to everywhere, like it can travel. It's like universal traveler, it can travel everywhere. And what is very interesting for me, the image of the snake in medicine.
Mm.
Why humanity chose this image of the snake, and we actually forget that this is the ability to be in the chaos, to find the goal and go through the chaos.
Yeah, I love that you talk about that, because I was just thinking as you were saying that around part of the ability to be with chaos, and whether that's a flood or a fire or a war or a tsunami or a birth that becomes unexpected, is the ability to change direction very quickly. And that's exactly what a snake can do. I was in a small rural town in New Zealand, Lokaming, and there was a massive flood and a cyclone actually. And the water was off and the power is going off, and there were sirens all the time, and I was the only midwife on for about a 4-hour drive radius. And actually I was so comfortable just trusting what will happen, right? What will happen is what will happen. But actually it makes me think about in that moment, or whether it's the chaos of you're driving your car and you think you have a wonderful day of visits planned, postnatal visits or antenatal visits, and then you get called to someone bleeding in pregnancy, or you get called to someone with reduced movements for their baby, or you get called to someone who's pushing, and you have to change direction very quickly. And so there's both that balance of deep center and the ability to change direction very quickly. In a birth, someone could be in a birth pool with the roses, and the baby comes out and it needs resuscitating. So you have to change your pace and your rhythm very quickly, just like the snake. And it reminds me of the myth you shared about the devil and the from the Lithuanian culture. I don't know if
Baltic.
you want to share that.
It's Latvian. It's Latvian myth. Yeah, it's Latvian myth, and it's about how the world was built, and so in the beginning was just water and nothing else, and there were two gods, two brothers basically, and one was involved and was in charge on the upper side of the water, so he was just floating in his boat, and his name was God. And the other brother was in charge about all underworld and like underwater part, and his name was Devil, and they both were brothers. And one day the god that was floating in the boat all around the water got really bored and decided to invite his brother and ask some mud from underneath of the water so he can create some things. So the devil went down, took some mud into his palms and brought it to the god. So God took it and sprayed it on one side, sprayed it on the other side, and there were like really flat land came out, like everything in order, everything is perfect. And then devil had some mud in his mouth. So he spit on one side, on other side, and then came out the mountains, and the rivers got into the turns, and yeah, everything got a little bit chaotic. But in my perspective, and it's how it is in this world, and like they're both creators, are very necessary.
And we were talking about how when the devil spat it in a chaotic way, it made the turns and the rivers, and it's the turns and the rivers that helps little fish to grow and helps.
Yeah, it's a way of safeness in that also.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a necessary comfort with chaos is absolutely a necessary ingredient for these times. In that, we saw with COVID everyone getting all fussy because they are so rattled, because we have such a disillusion. We are under such a deep illusion of having control. We have such an illusion that we can control life and death,
and then we can make everything in order.
Yes.
Like everything will be super organized, super order, super flat, super straight.
Yes. And I wonder for me that talks to when we're under this illusion, when we really try and rest in the comfort of this false, I think, sense of security, of order. You know, the asshole is tight. And how do people birth with it when the anus is tight, when that sense of, I cannot let go into the world being as it is. You know, the intestines are like the devil's mud spitting. They have little ins and outs and ups and downs. You know, we're in a culture that is terrified of the mud of the devil's mouth, of the twists and turns. But what happens then is people do not birth well. And how do we support?
It's not enough of movement. If you put it in very, very straightforward, the chaos is the movement.
Yes.
And the order is stillness.
Yes. That's interesting, because they could be one in the other, can't they? Like in the center of chaos, in the center of a tornado, also is stillness. And how do we support people to expand into the dark unknown of birth, into a level of comfort with chaos to be able to birth well? And how do we as care providers build our resilience to chaos? Because what we're seeing more and more in the world is more floods and more bushfires and more tsunamis and more pandemics. And you know, the pandemic in the apocalypse of birth is where we're having hospitals with 50 to 90% C-section rates. So I think chaos is an absolutely necessary ingredient looking forward in this world and its changing earth, in the catastrophe of earth. A comfort with chaos is an absolute necessary skill for humanness and also for birthing. Not only a comfort with chaos, but like you said, it was the devil that, in the Baltic myth, it was the devil that brought the chaos, and a comfort with chaos, but also a comfort with the unknown and with the dark.
Yeah. How much do we have? We did 10 minutes?
13?
No, just
22.
Oh, yeah, it felt like.
So perhaps to finish up this episode, what we talked about was chaos at the beginning of time, that the universe is often created from planets exploding and the chaos of that humans are created from the chaos of a sperm and an egg getting together, that chaos is energy finding order and the balance between chaos and order. And we talked about getting prepared for chaos and the skeleton tools. You know, in birth, if you have nothing, if you do not have a clean environment, if you do not have tools, if you do not have a torch, if you do not have clean water, using eyes and ears and mouth and touch. Of course, there's practical considerations of how do we have fire? You know, is it worth having a flint stick in your toolkit? Is it worth having one of those water purifier straws in your toolkit? Is it worth having a solar torch in your toolkit? Probably very much so in countries like Australia and New Zealand, where we have a lot of floods and fires and earthquakes and we are without power. Is it worth having things like you know, alcohol or hand sanitizer, but alcohol for sterilizing your equipment in your toolkit? What are the skeleton tools you need, not only externally, but internally? How do you build your resilience to change direction, to work with chaos, to flow like the cosmic snake? How do you build that in a culture that's losing that more and more?
I don't know how it's for you, Claire, but for me as a midwife, it was the main goal to learn midwifery in this way. Like, what is in me and what I have my own tools in my body that just gifted from the God and the devil from the universe, and what can I use if something happens, if there's no electricity, if there is no clean water, if there is a war, and I have the background of being attacked by Russians. No, Lithuanians were attacked and occupied it for a lot of years, and now we have war in Ukraine, which is very close also to us. And when you hear all these things, you think, okay, what you will do in that situation, because births will happen. Births will happen in any situation. And yeah, maybe you don't have medicine, maybe you don't have oxytocin, maybe you don't, like, how do you manage the bleeding, no? Or you don't have the ambu, how do you manage to resuscitate the baby?
Yeah, exactly. And my experience has been from remote rural places in New Zealand where there are floods and fires, and we've done, births on remote rural islands when there was no helicopter and no ambulance coming in a 35-week mama. How do you do it, and what are those basic tools? And I know my comfort level is, if I was out in the shed in the middle of nowhere with no water and no power, and there's a shoulder dystocia that needs some support or a resuscitation, I really trust my capacity. And how do we build that trust in our own capacity to deal with what's in front of us? There's an independence in it, and we need others.
Yeah. So in this podcast we basically we're going to talk about these tools. And we will also invite some guests into our talk. And so stay tuned, people. It's going to be interesting podcast.
And we'd love you, here's a gift from this podcast. Is the question is, how do you follow the curves? How do you flow and dance with chaos? How do you follow the curves that the devil created from his mud spit? Okay, we look forward to seeing you in the next podcast.
And would you like to tell, Claire, because your English is better than mine, what other themes we have?
Sure, so our next one, because we come out of chaos, which is like the Big Bang, and then the next one is intuition, which is spirit. And how do we work with intuition? Then we'll work with water, earth, so floods, earthquakes. We work
fires.